This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's March 12th, 2026. According to the internet, this is National Milky Way Day. It's one of those things that comes up when you do a search for all the various declared days, but most lists don't really tell you who established it or even which kind of Milky Way it's about. Google AI's overview tells me that it's a day meant to celebrate observation of our home galaxy and helpfully mentions that March is the start of the season when the Milky Way is most easily observed from the northern hemisphere. But a little more searching confirmed what I thought might actually be the case. It's not about stars and planets or the joys of astronomy. It's about the candy bar with a Tennessee connection. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Now, if I asked you to name a chocolate treat connected to our state, most likely folks in Nashville would say Goo Goo Clusters or Colts Bolts. Chattanoogan's and maybe folks from Bell Buckle would make sure to mention the moon pie. But around Giles County, Milky Way is very likely to come to mind, especially the ones who have reason to drive north of Pulaski on Highway 31. That's where Milky Way Farm is, on Milky Way Road. Now, the candy itself is a product of Minnesota. It was developed in 1924 to be the candy version of a malted milk drink that was named for the galaxy. It's considered to be the first filled chocolate bar. And when it first came out, it was a sensation. Within just a few years, it was the most popular candy bar in the nation. The man who developed it, Frank Mars, moved his company to Chicago in 1929. And the following year, he set up a regional office in Nashville and bought a large piece of acreage near Pulaski to be his country home. Now, Milky Way Farm was not the equivalent of a wealthy person today buying a small ranch in Montana or a cabin in the woods near Aspen as a spot to get away from the grind and enjoy nature. It was a working farm. Mars named it for the candy bar that made him the money it took to establish the farm, but he used the property to diversify into growing magnolia trees for sale, establishing a thoroughbred stable, and raising cattle. He built a huge manor house for the family, but also 70 cottages for staff and dozens of barns. And remember, this was the year right after the stock market crash, when the Great Depression was hitting hard and work was hard to come by. The establishment of Milky Way Farms really helped out the community by employing a significant number of people. Between the construction work of building the farm and those hired to be regular staff, Mars hired an estimated 800 people from 1931 to 1933. And for a while, the farm was the biggest employer in the county. Unfortunately, Frank Mars didn't live very long after the farm got up and running. After his death in 1934, his wife Ethel took charge and kept things humming along. The horse racing operation was especially successful. And thoroughbreds competed in Milky Way racing colors that echoed the chocolate bar's packaging. The jockeys wore chocolate brown caps, orange jerseys with milky white sleeves and a white star on the chest. According to her obituary, it was the most lucrative horse racing stable in the nation in 1934 and 1936. In 1940, a Milky Way horse named Galahadian won the Kentucky Derby. And when Ethel died in 1945, the farm was sold. Eventually, in the early 2000s, it caught the eye of developers. At one point, there was a plan to build nearly 1,000 houses on the property. But that deal went bust. And people interested in preserving a piece of Giles County history managed to piece together 1,100 acres of the farm, including the major buildings, back into one estate. They set up an agricultural easement to protect against future development. And now Milky Way Farm is operated as an event venue. They host things like weddings and corporate retreats, with historic tours sometimes available in what is marketed as Tennessee's Chocolate Estate. In just a few minutes, first there was the ice storm, now it's the evictions of people who were particularly hard hit. That's coming up after the newscast.
Here's the mantra I think about at WPLN. We connect the dots. It captures a mindset that our journalism is not merely about the latest press release or proclamations by officials. Instead, we can develop expertise, dig deeper, and look to history to understand what's happening now. I'm Tony Gonzalez, news director. When I'm planning coverage and editing stories, the best part is being part of a team that's curious about our community and invested in its future.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The latest poll from Vanderbilt University finds most Americans are concerned about the country's future as the cost of living rises and trusted politicians weakens. WPLN's Seth Thorpe breaks down why Americans are concerned about these issues and what that may mean politically.
Nothing is more pressing than the economy, Vanderbilt pollsters say. When asked, over 77% disagreed on the idea that their living expenses have decreased, and 63% believe the U.S. economy is bad.
I think in part, the economic gains of the last 20 years have been largely concentrated among the rich. And so, rural America, has not, for the most part, benefited from all these gains, and it leaves people unhappy.
John Geer, co-director of the Vanderbilt Unity Poll, worked with his team to learn what people are thinking. They find that Americans are frustrated with how the two main political parties interact, and the majority don't believe politicians care about them. Only 12% of people believe that Democrats care about them, and only 13% of people believe Republicans care about them, with them describing both parties as lacking sympathy.
We're all doing worse, and in some cases, like the Democrats, they got tossed out of power, the Republicans were put into power, and Republicans are keenly aware of that, and they're going to work as hard as they possibly can. But it's going to be, 2026 election is going to be a hard one for them.
Geer said the lack of trust, along with a struggling economy, appears to signal that there will be a shift of power in upcoming elections, like ones we've seen across the world. Seth Thorpe, WPLN News.
U.S. Representative Andy Ogles has called for all Muslims to leave America months before the midterm elections. His district includes a sizable Muslim population from Nashville's immigrant corridor. WPLN's Mariana Bacallao reports on how folks are responding.
Sabina Muhyiddin, executive director of the American Muslim Advisory Council, says Islamophobia is already on the rise, and these comments from her congressman can have ripple effects.
Bullying in schools, discrimination, vandalism, and so we are now having to brace ourselves what will happen next.
Muhyiddin says it's business as usual for Ogles, whose career has been defined by his inflammatory statements.
This is a distraction, but it is a dangerous distraction.
Muhyiddin says he's distracting from his job in Congress.
What have you done for our district? And have you gone in and met people in your district, including the Muslim community?
Ogles had met with members of Nashville's Kurdish community before becoming a congressman. Tabir Tabor, president of the Tennessee Kurdish Community Council, even invited Ogles to this year's celebration of Nowruz, the Kurdish New Year.
Now we're very hesitant if we're gonna, invite Andy Ogles into our event after these remarks.
Kurdish Americans have historical ties to the Republican Party, since both Bush presidencies allied with the Kurds. Tabor's organization is secular, representing Christians, Yazidis, and Muslims. That religious freedom is important, he says.
This is the greatest country in the world, the United States is. It's a melting pot, so diverse, amount of people came from everywhere, different beliefs. America is beautiful for the way it's been, for the way it is,
Tabor would still like to have a working relationship with Ogles, since he represents a large portion of Nashville's Kurdish community. But he says not everyone feels the same. Mariana Bacallao, WPLN News.
Tennessee teenagers will soon be able to seek sexual assault exams without parental approval. A bill passed by the legislature and headed to the governor's desk says anyone over the age of 14 can ask for a rape kit. That means teenagers molested by family members won't be in the position of having to ask their abusers for permission to collect evidence of that wrongdoing. The Nashville Scene reports the change comes as the state sees significant reduction in the time it takes for officials to process rape kit evidence. As of January, the turnaround time in Nashville is about 9 weeks. A few years ago, it could take 45 weeks for the evidence to be tested. Access to the exams has expanded across the city with the opening of the Nashville Sexual Assault Center and more hospitals now offering the service. The number of rape kits collected annually has doubled since 2018. Nashville Electric Service did not follow its own communications plan as it worked to repair downed lines and broken poles after Winter Storm Fern. The ice storm knocked out power to more than 200,000 homes and businesses. Some waited more than a week to get it back, and NES took several days to give estimates for total restoration at the zip code level. That's not the plan outlined in a 19-page NES document acquired by Axios. It says the utility should give a restoration timeline within 24 hours of sustained mass outages. It also calls for NES to provide hourly updates. But the utility says the ice storm was beyond that plan's scope. Some folks who did get more frequent updates include 2 NES board members. News Channel 5 reports those people contacted CEO Teresa Broyles-Applin directly, who then instructed staff to give specific updates. NES says no crews were redirected. Critics of NES's communications after the storm include Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell, who has since created a commission to investigate NES's response. Martha Sundquist, who was the wife of the late Congressman and 2-term Tennessee Governor Don Sundquist, has died. Her passing comes after that of the former governor in 2023. Their son, Deke Sundquist, tells the Tennessean she'd been in the hospital in recent weeks, but had been expected to come home. Remembrances came from Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally and from the House Republican caucus, which called the former First Lady a, quote, devoted public servant who faithfully served the people of Tennessee. Martha Sundquist was 88 years old. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Evictions have been a concern ever since Winter Storm Fern hit, forcing people into costly situations. So one way the city has tried to soften the blow is by creating a special court process to connect people with rental assistance. But as WPLN's Cynthia Abrams reports, it hasn't yet helped many people.
Mornings at the courthouse are often a scramble. You've got lawyers and plaintiffs and defendants in all sorts of cases. And Tuesday morning featured another player. A group of organizers from Court Watch 615 had planted themselves outside the courthouse, asking anyone who walked by,
"Are you here for an eviction today?"
If the answer was yes, they encouraged the tenants to try and get moved onto the special Winter Storm eviction docket. It's intended to help people apply for cash assistance and give them time to get money together for rent. But so far, organizers say it seemed like things weren't running smoothly. Here's Melissa Cherry.
Information is power. We found out that the first week that this court was operational that very few people took advantage of it, largely because people didn't know it existed.
On Tuesday, there were 139 people on the regular eviction docket. Next door, the Winter Storm Court had only 2. One was Dawn, a military veteran. Her car battery died during the ice storm, and the cost of replacing it caused her to fall behind on rent. She began at regular eviction court last week, but was transferred to the storm docket. Now, she has a mix of hope and fear.
When I came out of the parking garage, there were several people sleeping on the sidewalks and stuff, and it scares me that that could be me. I don't know. I don't know what to do.
Dawn relies on her VA and disability benefits to get by. Because she now owes rent for February and March, plus legal and late fees, she is in real need of rental assistance. The winter storm docket could be a fast track for Dawn to access that. But not everyone has been able to get on that track. There's a number of reasons why. Some people don't know about it, others don't qualify, and organizers worry that landlords have been discouraging people from trying to get this help. Metro Council member Erin Evans says that there does seem to be some reticence among landlords.
So I was hearing that there were some of our Metro processes that have made some landlords kind of feel a little gun shy about accepting assistance from the government because of how long our processes are.
Nathan Linebaugh, a local attorney representing landlords, says some felt burned by similar programs during COVID.
At least in some cases, money that was allocated or that was lined up to help pay those tenants' rent that just never came through.
But on this day with Dawn, he's still giving it a chance.
As long as that rent can be caught up and as long as those rents can stay paid, there's not many of my clients that want to see anyone evicted or removed from their home.
Dawn's going through this process alone. She doesn't feel comfortable telling her daughters what has happened.
They don't know anything because I'm afraid to tell them. And certainly afraid to ask for help. And it makes me feel like I'm kind of a loser. And I don't want them to have that picture.
Dawn still has to come back to court. Like many others, there's still uncertainty if Metro's effort will be enough to keep a roof over their heads. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at wpln.org/NashVillager. Thanks so much for listening today. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.